Okay, so we're going to talk about 4 bylaws that every strata corporation should be considering. You have an AGM coming up? Probably, if it's a week away, too late. But if you've got an AGM coming up 3-4 months away, now is really the time to start looking at these 4 bylaws. They're exciting. They're insurance, marijuana, cultivation, privacy, and short-term rentals. Number 1, I'll take this one. Insurance deductible. It is very likely, because there's a common bylaw out there, that your chance of charging back a deductible may be hindered. Case in point, your bylaw might say that the owner has to be negligent, you see that bolded up there, to be responsible for the deductible chargeback. Let me take a step forward. I'm going to make him name. Joe Smith. Joe Smith turns on the bathtub. Bathtub overflows, floods out 18 units, okay? Large insurance claim, Strata corporation's insurance covers the damage. However, there's a $25,000 deductible in this case, could be a different amount. In what most strata corporations' goals are that homeowner that caused that flood would pay the deductible. In a perfect world, they have homeowners insurance, they pay their deductible, $300 let's say, and that covers that. But the idea is that the strata corporation doesn't cover the deductible for a homeowner's responsibility, AKA they left the bathtub on. Okay, so a lot of the current bylaws out there say that that person has to be proven to be negligent in order to charge that back. Negligence is a really high bar to hit, and if you have to prove it, it's really difficult to do. You really need to, what, the person to admit it?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Close to that, yeah.
So there's many cases. I have a personal one that I remember where a sprinkler head magically went off in this lady's unit and flooded all the way from the 22nd floor to the parquet down the electrical shaft, right? Huge amounts of damage. And I was in the unit, no kidding, 10 minutes after the fire department had hammered in the wedge into the sprinkler head to stop the water, and it was like I felt like it was in the Amazon forest. It was so humid, and the guinea pigs were in the sink, and there was water everywhere. And I talked to her, like, what happened? I don't know. Okay, so it magically burst, right? But in that case, there was no proof that she had done anything wrong, even though there was a vacuum cleaner she could have hit it with, there's laundry, and there was candles in the bathroom. We can't prove anything, but there's chances are she was responsible for it, but not negligent. Okay?
So, if I may just jump in. So once upon a time, the bylaw that had the word negligent or used act or omission or carelessness was seen actually to be a good bylaw when it came back to a chargeback bylaw, based on some old legal case authority. But there's been an evolution over time with legal decisions that have resulted in a need to revise the wording, and this is kind of one of the more recent cases where it's just been confirmed, as Sean has said, that if you want to use the word negligent, you're going to have to prove negligence, which creates an obligation to show intentionality and more than just responsibility.
Yeah, and that's the key thing, is that, so this is my next slide. Thanks, Jamie, stealing my thunder. Is that this bylaw, and I'm not going to read it, says that the homeowner just has to be responsible. So responsible is a much lower threshold. Really, if there's water coming from your unit and it's not a strata corporation responsibility, it's your responsibility. And that covers a lot of broad subject. So it's a common bylaw that's being put in place in a lot of strata corporations. You should read your bylaws, and if you see negligence or you're not sure, ask a lawyer, ask a strata manager. You probably want to change your insurance deductible bylaw, because when you go to charge back that 25K, 20K, we won what's like 75,000, and you can't do it, or you get challenged and lose, it's not going to be pretty. Okay.
I'll just jump in once again, is that it's not that the owner is going to say no. It's quite often the owner has an insurance company behind them, and they know what the law says about the burden of proof and the standard, whether it's negligence or responsibility. So if you get rid of that language, the insurance companies are more likely to step forward and pay that deductible and avoid the need for litigation. If you slap it on there anyhow, then you're going to end up in front of the CRT having to prove something other than responsibility. Having been said, we know that the laws are changing. We're not quite sure exactly what those laws will be and when they're going to come into force, but we've seen little tidbits here, a little tidbit there about, you know, July of 2018, and the idea of cultivation and what you can cultivate for personal consumption, and, you know, where you can locate it, where you can grow it, and so on and so forth. But it really doesn't address what homeowners and strata corporations, what strata councils can do when it comes to dealing with the cultivation of marijuana. And I would say probably for the last year, the majority of my clients who are looking for bylaw reviews have this at the close to the top of their list when it comes to bylaws that they want to put in place, because it's something that they, you know, that there may be some difference of opinion in terms of the you know, the good or bad of marijuana, but you know, it's something that I think the majority of strata corporations do not want in their strata corporations. So, looking at you know, what you can do, for example, this is just a bylaw that has been you know, voted on by strata corporations to restrict the cultivation. And so, you know, all the catchwords are there. You could think of: must not be used, occupied, or modified for the purposes of growing, producing, harvesting, marketing, selling, or distribution of cannabis or marijuana. Storage within the strata lot or transport through common property of cannabis or marijuana is also prohibited in except quantities less than or equal to limits specified for personal possession of cannabis or marijuana under relevant Canadian or BC legislation. That's a mouthful, probably written by a lawyer who forgot how to use periods and commas. Not me. But the key, though, is to identify again through a bylaw what restriction on use, what control on use you want to put into place. The federal laws are going to trump, in many instances, what strata corporations can do. But in order to control it, and I have a client who says this all the time: do you have a bylaw? If you don't have a bylaw, you don't have a hope in hell of controlling something. But if you've got a bylaw, at least you've got a foothold when it comes to the enforcement process.
Short-term rentals, I'm up for that one. If you're attending this meeting, chances are you already have a bylaw, or you've already had a discussion in your strata council about short-term rentals. Short-term rentals, like Airbnb, VRBO, or Craigslist, are quite common. Most strata corporations have now implemented a bylaw to either restrict it. Some have not. I've been to a couple AGMs where the ownership passionately voted down any restrictions on short-term rentals. They're for them. And so that, again, is up to every community to decide what they want. But the vast majority are putting in short-term rental bylaws. There's also been a case called High Street, and they found like a loophole. And so instead of calling it a rental, they're calling it a licensing, right? And when it was reviewed, it was determined that licensing didn't apply. So what you need to do is you need to have a specifically crafted bylaw for short-term rentals so that you can limit them if, again, your ownership chooses to limit them. We've got one. This one is pretty clear-cut. Short-term, strata lot must not be used for short-term accommodation, purposes such as bed and breakfast, lodging, hotel, home exchange, timeshare, Airbnb, and it goes on and on. And it also says licenses. And so this is a great, simple bylaw that you can use to limit short-term rental in your strata corporation. If you leave it to a bylaw that says you can't have short-term rental, High Street case has shown that there is a loophole through it if it's considered a licensing agreement, which some of them are. So really with short-term, I know most of you probably are addressed it. If you haven't, there's some great new simple bylaws out there Jamie or someone else can help you with just to address short-term rentals. Privacy, this is a big one.
And before I jump into privacy, back to short-term rentals, at one point in time, the owner, tenant, occupant shall not use the strata lot for an illegal purpose. Used to be, I guess the bylaw that we hung our hats on because the city of Vancouver found short-term rentals under 30 days to be illegal. But because of organizations like Airbnb and High Street pushing hard to be able to utilize luxury suites in buildings around the lower mainland. It was necessary to really start to craft something that was more specific. Again, I'll keep on using the word use restriction, control of use. It's not a rental restriction bylaw. Those deal with limits on numbers and percentages. It's a use restriction bylaw. All right, so let's talk about privacy. Another bylaw that gets put to the top of the list when I have a request for a bylaw review. I have clients who say to me, we've had cameras for a dozen years and we've never had a problem. Do we need a bylaw? Well, the Office of the Information and the Privacy Commissioner, OIPC for short, if you're making notes, has said, yes, you do. And in fact, if you go onto their website, which if you want to make a note of this, www.oipc.bc.ca.
Repeat, please.
www.oipc.bc.ca.
Jamie, I don't think anyone says www anymore.
Yeah, okay. I know. Anyhow, you go onto that website and you're going to have to kind of work your way through the website, but you're going to come across guidelines for strata corporations and strata agents when it comes to the collection of personal information and privacy. And within that guideline package, you will find information about what should be identified for privacy purposes in strata corporations when it comes to CCTV cameras and when it comes to the use of fobs. Because of course you're collecting personal information. There's other personal information. You've got bank account information and emails and phone numbers and so on and so forth. But you've got personal information. Facial capture, and fob is the activity of people coming and going. So what's important about a privacy bylaw is that you identify when it comes to fobs and cameras, certainly cameras, the location of your cameras. And that you use them for the purpose that's set out in the guidelines. You don't use them for entertainment. And I'll just do a little bit of a segue. There's a decision called Shoal Point that came out of the Office of the Information and Privacy Commissioner a number of years ago. I'll make a long story short. It's a building that there were a number of seniors there who used the CCTV cameras as kind of a soap opera. And they would view it on a regular basis just for some entertainment value. And then they would go knock on a council member's door and said, well, Martha just violated the bylaw because she came in the garage and didn't let the door, didn't wait for the door to go down, for example, before she went on. And, Shoal Point, the decision effectively said, if you're going to have your cameras, make sure you're using them for proper purposes. Significant bylaw infractions, if it's for safety and security, I think fit within the guidelines, but don't use them to enforce against Mary because she didn't let the door go down before she drove away, or if she left the door open for a minute while she dragged her second bag of groceries in through the front door. Identifying where the cameras are, how people can access their personal information, that's important because of course it does belong to them, so that should be going into a bylaw. And then the last point is a disclaimer on changes. You may move the cameras, you may put them in different places, so you can have a disclaimer that says, we're not responsible if we happen to move them, we're still collecting personal information and the bylaw still applies. We didn't have room in this presentation to put the 3 or 4 page privacy guideline, privacy bylaw in. But again, if you go onto that website, you'll get a pretty good idea of what should be in a bylaw. If you have cameras and don't have the bylaw, or if you're thinking of putting in cameras and want the bylaw. I think it's a good idea in any event to have a privacy guideline in place. And again, you can look on that website for that information.
Yeah, and just to note is the fob readers are the same, or covered under the same, it's information just like a CCTV would be information.